I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah.
And you suddenly realize your entire vocabulary has just been wiped clean,
Oh, wow. Just completely erased.
completely erased.
Yeah.
I mean, linguists estimate that the average adult native speaker actively uses um, somewhere around 20 to 30,000 words.
Yeah, it's a massive database we carry around.
Right. But what if you had to strip your ability to communicate down to just 20 sentences? Like, could you actually survive the day?
That is a fascinating constraint to think about.
It really is.
Yeah.
What is the absolute minimum linguistic toolkit? The bare bones structural script required to actually function in human society.
Because you are stripping away all the nuance of human expression,
Mm.
the poetry, the philosophical debates, the clever
Right.
jokes.
All the fun stuff is gone.
Exactly. And you are leaving only the load-bearing pillars of social interaction. You wouldn't be worried about expressing your deepest self. You'd be operating strictly on survival tools and functional communication.
Which is exactly the premise of today's deep dive. We're looking at this brilliantly focused audio guide titled Essential Everyday English Sentences for Beginners.
It's quite a resource.
It really is. The source material is an educational script designed to teach someone starting from absolute zero exactly 20 foundational sentences.
And on the surface, if you just glance at the transcript, it looks like the most basic vocabulary list imaginable.
Oh, totally. Just standard textbook stuff.
But when you look closer at the specific selection of these phrases, it transforms into a masterclass in human psychology.
Yeah. And our mission today isn't just to recite these 20 sentences to you. We're going to explore the underlying mechanisms of why these specific phrases were chosen as the ultimate starter pack for human interaction.
Because they really are a starter
They
pack.
are. What do they reveal about our daily social scripts? I mean, the creators of this guide didn't just pull random words out of a hat. They engineered a psychological roadmap for navigating an average day.
They absolutely did. They mapped out the entire architecture of how humans tolerate and coordinate with one another.
Before we get into the actual linguistics, I just have to point out the specific tone of the source material. It is incredibly unpretentious.
It has a very calming vibe.
It does. It has this relaxed teaching rhythm that actively encourages the listener to slow down. They build in these great little practice moments where the speaker pauses and literally says, let's repeat the sentence.
Giving the learner a chance to actually feel the words in their own mouth.
Exactly, because it recognizes that language is physical. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the absolute threshold of any human encounter, the social handshake.
The threshold is the perfect way to look at it. You cannot simply walk up to another human being and initiate a complex interaction or a transaction without first establishing a shared baseline.
You have to prove you're a safe bet.
Right. You have to prove you are a predictable actor.
The guide tackles this by starting with the most universal, almost invisible greeting on the planet, which is, how are you? Followed immediately by its permanently welded response, I'm fine. Thank you.
A classic exchange.
Very classic. The source gives a very simple daily example of two friends meeting in the morning. One says, hi, Rahul, how are you? And the friend answers, I am good. How are you?
Which is really the rhythmic drumbeat of daily life across almost every culture. It's just translated into different localized sounds.
I hear that, but I have a major piece of pushback here.
Okay, let's hear it.
When someone says, I'm fine, thank you, or I am good, are they actually conveying useful data? Like, are they really sharing their emotional state?
Usually not, no.
Because when I look at this exchange, I don't see an emotional unburdening. I see a computer network handshake.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Think about it. When two computers connect to a network, they send a ping back and forth just to say, I am online and I recognize that you are online.
Mm,
And they do this before any real data is allowed to transfer.
that makes perfect sense.
So is I'm fine just a required social password? And if it is, aren't we actively training beginners to hide their actual needs right out of the gate. What if the person is literally having an emergency?
Well, what's fascinating here is that anthropologists actually have a term for this. It's called phatic communication.
Phatic communication.
Right. It is language used not to share information, but to perform a social task. And to your point about it being a trap or hiding needs, it is actually a deeply necessary safety mechanism.
How so?
Phatic communion is the human equivalent of primates grooming each other. When you ask, "How are you?" and receive the expected "I'm fine, thank you," you are not asking for a medical or psychological diagnostic.
Right, you don't want their medical history.
Exactly. You are both agreeing to follow the baseline rules of social engagement. It proves you are both safe, predictable, and cooperative. If someone approaches you and ignores that protocol, your nervous system immediately spikes.
Because they're breaking the script.
Yes. Only after that psychological safety is established can you move on to exchanging real, vulnerable information.
I see what you mean, though I'd argue it still feels like a linguistic straitjacket sometimes. But if we accept that the ping is necessary for safety, it leads directly into the next phase of the handshake, which is establishing identity.
The basics of who you were dealing with.
Exactly. The guide teaches, "Nice to meet you," and it uses the scenario of a workplace introduction, like, "Hello, my name is John. Nice to meet you."
Followed immediately by the essential data gathering tools like, "What's your name? My name is," and "Where are you from?"
And the source keeps the situational examples incredibly grounded, answering with, "My name is David," or Sarah, or Amit, and establishing origin with, "I am from India." It essentially places the speaker on a map.
You should think of those specific phrases as a social coordinate system.
A coordinate system, I like that.
Yeah, you have passed the security check with the greeting, and now you are giving the other person your latitude and longitude in the human landscape.
Providing context.
Right, you are providing them the exact mental categorization they need to understand how to properly engage with you. Who are you and what is your context?
So we have established trust, and we have exchanged our coordinates. But the second you step out of that initial greeting and into a shared public space, you are a physical object navigating around other physical objects.
And collision is inevitable.
Exactly. People need things, they bump into things, they cause friction. So how does this starter pack handle the inevitable social friction?
Well, it provides what are arguably the most critical de-escalation mechanisms in the English language.
The apologies and requests.
Yes, we are talking about the phrases, "Can you help me?" "Excuse me, I'm sorry, thank you," and "You're welcome."
The guide uses wonderfully mundane scenarios for these. For "Can you help me?", the example is just being in a shop, unable to find an item, and approaching a worker. "Excuse me, can you help me?"
It is a functional admission of need.
Right. It's simple but necessary.
Right, it's simple but necessary.
But notice the deliberate pairing there. The request for help is preceded by, "Excuse me."
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source material is incredibly careful to draw a hard, bright line between "excuse me" and "I'm sorry."
Which is a crucial distinction. Native speakers sometimes blur these, but functionally, they are entirely different mechanisms. The guide explicitly demonstrates using "excuse me" to politely get attention, like asking a stranger for directions to the bus stop.
Yeah, it's a polite interruption.
But it restricts "I'm sorry" to moments when you make a mistake or accidentally commit a physical offense, like stepping on someone's foot.
That distinction is paramount when we talk about personal sovereignty and boundaries. Sociologists often talk about face theory, which is our desire to move through the world without being imposed upon.
Face theory. Got it.
Right. "Excuse me" is a polite request to momentarily breach someone's boundary. You are asking permission to interrupt their flow. "I'm sorry," on the other hand, is an admission of liability after a boundary has already been breached.
The consequences of mixing them up are enormous. I mean, imagine you are on a crowded subway train, the car lurches, and you step incredibly hard on a stranger's foot.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right. And if you look them in the eye and confidently declare, "Excuse me, You sound monstrous.
You sound entirely entitled.
Exactly. As if you are demanding they remove their foot from beneath your shoe.
It signals to the other person that you fundamentally do not understand the rules of shared space. Conversely, if you walk up to a stranger sitting on a park bench just to ask for the time, and you open with a deeply tragic,
You completely warp the power dynamic of the interaction.
Exactly. You are entering the conversation from a place of perceived guilt and subservience, rather than just initiating a standard social interruption.
Which brings a whole new weight to the universal markers of gratitude. Thank you. Used when someone holds a door open, and the required balancing phrase, "You're welcome."
It reveals why politeness markers are treated as beginner-level essentials. We tend to think of etiquette as something luxurious, a finishing school concept.
Like knowing which fork to use.
Right. But in the linguistic survival kit, politeness markers are raw survival tools. When you are in a dense public space surrounded by strangers whose temperaments you do not know, the ability to rapidly deploy an excuse me, is what prevents minor physical collisions from escalating into physical conflicts.
They are the lubricants that stop the gears of a crowded society from grinding and throwing sparks.
That's a great way to put it.
So politeness works perfectly for physical friction. But what about intellectual friction?
What do you mean?
Well, you can smooth over a bumped shoulder, but if the actual data transfer fails, like if you fundamentally do not comprehend the words the other person is saying, the entire interaction collapses anyway.
Which necessitates a built-in troubleshooting system. You must have the ability to halt the process when the data is corrupted.
And that takes us to the third phase of the guide, the emergency brakes. Sentences 16, 17, and 18. I understand, I don't understand, and could you repeat that?
From a purely functional standpoint, the ability to ensure comprehension is infinitely more valuable than the ability to speak with perfect grammar.
The source outlines these in very practical terms, too. It frames, I understand, as a tool for confirming information, using the example of a teacher explaining a concept. You nod and confirm receipt.
It keeps the flow going.
Right. But the real power, the absolute heavyweight tool in this entire list, lies in the negative. The force notes that when someone speaks too fast, you need to be able to stop them and say, "Sorry, I don't understand," or "Could you repeat that?"
This raises an important question about vulnerability and the ego. We are talking about an audio guide designed for adult beginners.
And that's a tough position to be in.
It is incredibly difficult for an adult who is likely highly competent in their native language and their professional life to look another adult in the eye and admit total ignorance.
Feels like a massive loss of status. You are suddenly a child again, admitting you are lost in the dark.
It requires a lot of humility.
It does. I always compare these three sentences to pulling the emergency brake on a runaway train. You are locked in a conversation, the other person is talking rapidly, the idioms and slang are flying by like scenery out the window.
And you're just nodding along.
Right, until suddenly you realize you have completely lost the plot. The conversational train is moving entirely too fast for your cognitive load to process. It is terrifying to be in that seat. You have to swallow your pride, reach up, and pull that heavy metal brake. Sorry, I don't understand.
It takes immense courage. But when you pull that brake, you execute a profound shift in the power dynamic. You force the entire system to stop, recalibrate, and cater to you.
You change the rules of the game.
Functionally, the ability to say, "I don't understand," or "Could you repeat?" that transfers the cognitive burden back to the speaker. They now have to work harder to make themselves clear.
It slows the chaotic world down to a manageable processing pace.
Exactly. You stop being a passive victim of noise, and you become an active manager of the information flow.
You take control of the interaction, which is the perfect conceptual bridge to the final set of sentences in this guide. We have moved from establishing trust to avoiding physical conflict to managing our own comprehension.
So what's left?
The final piece of the daily puzzle is about agency. It is about shifting from a reactive existence to a proactive one.
Ah, so the learner graduates from merely surviving the environment to actually directing it.
Exactly. Sentences 12 through 15 plus 19 and 20. What are you doing? I'm busy right now. Let's go. Wait a moment. What time is it? And see you later.
The situational examples provided by the source for this final group are deeply deliberate regarding personal autonomy.
Let's look at them. For inquiring about an activity, you use, what are you doing? And receive a baseline answer like, I'm watching a movie.
A simple exchange of current status.
But then the guide tackles setting boundaries. It gives this brilliant, highly relatable scenario. Your friend calls you while you were in the middle of working.
A classic interruption.
Right. And in a lot of cultures, the pressure to just endure that interruption is immense. But the guide teaches the beginner to assert a wall. You say, I'm busy right now. I'll call you later.
That's powerful.
Or if someone drops a complex question on you and you need processing time, you don't just panic. You say, wait a moment, let me think.
Those are profound assertions of individual rights.
So what does this all mean? To me, it shows an incredibly empowering evolution in a very short curriculum. The person deploying these specific sentences is no longer just a helpless beginner asking a shop worker to find an item or apologizing for stepping on toes.
They're actively protecting their resources.
Yes, I'm busy protects your current time. Wait a moment, protects your mental processing space.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the study of how humans use time in communication, which is called chronemics, shows us that resource guarding is a universal necessity.
Chronemics. That's fascinating.
Regardless of what culture you originate from or what language you are currently struggling to learn, you have to be able to protect your focus and direct your own schedule. Without the ability to enforce a boundary, you belong entirely to the whims of the public.
Which is exhausting.
It is. And that is why these boundary-setting phrases make the elite top 20 list out of the millions of sentences you could possibly memorize.
But it isn't just about stopping action or building walls. It is about initiating action, too. When you need to coordinate movement with friends to go watch that movie, you take the lead and say, let's go.
You're directing the flow.
Right. When you need to orient yourself in the day, you demand the data. What time is it? And you receive the coordinates. It's 3 o'clock.
Gaining spatial and temporal awareness.
And finally, you have to possess the linguistic tool to cleanly sever a connection and walk away, which is executed with the classic, see you later.
It is the necessary bookend to how are you? You open the connection with a recognizable ritual, and you must close the connection with a recognizable ritual.
Ensuring that no social debts are left unpaid.
And no one feels abandoned mid-interaction.
When you lay it all out like this, you realize it is a complete structural map of daily human life. Looking back at the journey this seemingly simple audio script takes its listeners on, it is so much more than 20 flashcards.
It really is an entire psychological journey.
It walks you through the social handshake of basic greetings, guides you into the friction smoothers and liability management of shared physical spaces, teaches you how to deploy the emergency comprehension brakes to protect your cognitive load, and finally arms you with the tools to manage your time, set your boundaries, and assert your agency.
It provides the invisible scaffolding of a functioning society.
It really does. And the source material ends with a really encouraging call to action. The speakers remind the listener to treat these sentences not as text to be read, but as tools to be wielded.
Application is key.
They suggest practicing them every single day, speaking them with friends, or even just speaking them out loud alone in front of a mirror to slowly grow that physical confidence in your jaw and your throat. It reinforces that language is a muscle.
And like any muscle, it requires repetition and routine to build the necessary muscle memory. You want these phrases to be reflexive, not something you have to translate in your head while someone is waiting for an apology.
Which brings up something incredibly crucial for you, the listener, to remember. Even if you are a completely fluent, highly educated native speaker with a massive vocabulary.
Which many of you probably are.
Right. If you actively monitor your daily life tomorrow, you will find that the vast majority of your transactional interactions still rely entirely on these exact same 20 basic scripts.
It's unavoidable.
You are still using the same handshake. You are still deploying the same friction smoothers at the grocery store. You are still pulling the same emergency brakes when a meeting gets too complex.
We might dress them up with polysyllabic words or corporate jargon, like saying I am currently operating at capacity instead of I'm busy.
Oh, corporate jargon is the worst.
Right, but the core function remains absolutely identical. The underlying architecture of the interaction doesn't change just because your vocabulary expands.
That brings us right back to the thought experiment we opened with. We talked about wiping your vocabulary clean and keeping only a minimal toolkit. I want to leave you with a slightly different challenge to mull over today.
A different angle on the constraint.
Exactly. Think about the 20 sentences we just analyzed. The greetings, the polite requests, the apologies, the boundary setting. Now, consider the rapid rise of AI assistants, automated checkouts, and app-based ordering.
The digital layer of society.
Right. We are increasingly designing a world that removes the need for these exact 20 friction-smoothing sentences from our physical lives. You don't need to ask for help to find an item. You just check the app.
Or use a self-service kiosk.
Exactly. You don't need to say, excuse me, or thank you to a barista. You just grab your mobile order from a silent counter. We are systematically engineering the human friction out of our days.
We are bypassing the social handshake entirely.
Exactly. So here is the thought to take with you. If these 20 sentences are the foundational trust-building exercises of human interaction, the very things that prove we are safe, cooperative actors in a shared space.
What happens when they disappear?
Right. What happens to the fabric of our society when we stop practicing them in our daily errands? If we lose the daily repetition of the starter pack, do we eventually forget how to be beginners with each other?
That is a chilling thought.
Think about it. See you later.